Chapter 5, Rem. Compared to her older sister, the girl named Rem had a very difficult everyday life. Even among humanoids, the might and mana possessed by the demon race were head and shoulders above the rest. Their robust bodies and the quality of the mana they employed granted them peerless fighting strength. They boasted the title of the mightiest of all humanoid races. The single weakness the demons possessed was their crushingly low population. A race dedicated to producing the mightiest individuals did not give breath to great numbers, and so, despite their strength, the demon race was obliged to dwell in poor villages deep within the mountains. Because they were a race dwelling far from human habitation, there were strict taboos among the demons to protect their limited numbers. To their race, twins were abominations. This was one of the unbreakable laws of demonkind. By nature, demons are born with two horns on their head. In tranquil times the horns are hidden, but when circumstances change and their demon instincts awaken, the horns appear on their heads and consume mana from the surrounding area. Their horns draw in and control mana from the atmosphere, greatly heightening their combat capabilities. This purpose made them the pride of their race. But twins were born with only one horn each. Among demons, the hornless were considered the dregs of society. Losing even one was cause for ridicule. Twins lacked something deeply precious from the moment of their birth. What else could they be but abominations? And so, it was taught that twins were to be discarded immediately. The fate of this pair of twins ought to have ended then and there. And it would have, had one of the twins not displayed her gift from the heavens with a tremendous burst of magical power the very moment the chief, having made the bitter decision, was about to render judgment by his own hand. The older twin was named Ram, the younger, Remington. Both occupied the lowest rungs on the ladder among the tribe. Their daily lives were far from pleasant. Even though their lives had been spared, they were still twins. Both were treated as hornless from the beginning and raised inhospitably by their people. In spite of their connection by blood, their own parents acted distantly toward them. Their fellow tribesmen did not hide their contempt for the two abominations. For both of them, it was the worst childhood imaginable. The hostility continued until the demons realized what they were capable of, or more precisely, until the older of the twins became aware of it herself. The most accurate term describing Ram during childhood was Wonder Child. She had talent that exceeded even that of great demons throughout their storied history. Indeed, their entire race was enthralled by the beauty of Ram's horn, which allowed her to use a vast amount of mana in spite of her youth. Her demeanor was as forthright as the single, pure white horn on her forehead, lacking any hint of becoming drunk on her own might and potential, making it seem natural for their brethren to bow their heads before her. It was very special treatment for a girl who was not yet 10 years of age. Even their cold and distant parents, even their kin who had openly scorned them, even the chief who had tried to slay the twins shortly after birth, all were speechless before Ram's authority. She was destined from birth to become the pinnacle of the horned demons, the mightiest of all humanoid races. Members of a race that prized individual strength were flawless in their politeness toward an individual with such power. And yet, Ram never once used the tribe's reverence for her own benefit. All Ram could do was stumble down her older sister's path to glory. She had no abilities above the norm. Her mana supply was strictly average, with her body's capabilities in line with what a normal demon with only one horn could do. Compared to Ram, she did not have a shred of confidence. She cowered behind her sister's back like a shadow. That was how the young Rem coped. That was how she protected her immature heart. It wasn't that she was jealous of her older sister. She admired her. She adored her. It wasn't that her parents hated her. They loved the younger as well as the older. It wasn't as if their people had spurned Remington. Of course they had high hopes. She was her little sister. Her sister, kinder than anyone, her parents, full of expectations, all her kin, cheering her on to excel like her twin. These were the little cuts that chafed Remington. No doubt it was the direct consequence of her and her sister looking like two peas in a pod. Yet even though their heights and faces were identical, their qualities as demons were on completely different scales. Of course, Rem strived to change those circumstances. It may have been no more than shallow, clumsy trial-and-error efforts by a young child, but Rem tried any and every way of getting closer to her older sister, to beat her in even a single area. But Rem was simply better at everything. And so, Rem was still a young child when she learned that the sister to whom she was closest, the sister she loved more than anything, occupied an area that she could never, ever reach. She could never stand by her sister's side. Rem would always walk ahead of her, bathed in the light of the world. Rem's place was behind her sister, cowering behind her back, peeking out once in a while, only to shrink away from the dazzling light. Once she gave up, she could accept the sufferings of daily life, like a reed bending with the wind. She wondered how long she would have to bear her own weak capitulation. One night, Rem awoke, unable to sleep well because of the heat. She slid off the wooden bed and pulled the blankets off her sweat-covered body. When Rem looked around, she suddenly realized that her older sister, always sleeping beside her, was gone. I have to look for my sister right away, she thought. If her sister was awake, she had to follow behind her majestic gait. To do so without fail, even for matters as trivial as waking up briefly to pee, was Rem's obsession at the time. I have to go outside, but only then did Rem belatedly notice the source of the warmth, flames that enveloped her home. When she touched the doorknob, she yanked her hand back from its heat. At that moment, the truth sank in. Rem's sleepy sense of smell was awoken by the scent of something burned. Her forehead felt itchy as her horn grew, appearing fully. Instantly, she used her solid body to break the door down and dash out of the house enveloped in the hellish flames. She didn't know why this had happened, but she obeyed her instincts to flee, to get outside. Rem kicked apart the brittle fence and rushed from her home to the outside world. Even then, a single, fanatical thought ruled in her mind: I have to leave the house and have Sis tell me what to do. But then, that thought fell by the wayside at the sight awaiting her once she left the house. In the center of the village was a pile of burned bodies. The burning houses and flame-swept trees had turned her familiar world into a reddish hell in one night. When Rem saw the faces of her parents among the corpses swallowed by the flames, she immediately abandoned all rational thought and fell to her knees then and there. Rem remained kneeling as a group of men dressed in black robes calmly surrounded her. Even up close, the deep shadows of their hoods hid their faces until they were very close. Even then, they were not faces she recognized. However, when Rem did not sense a single trace of goodwill from them, a smile came over her that seemed alien on her cheeks. That smile was the one that hid her despair for the good of everyone else. The figures did not respond in the slightest to the expression or the pain behind it. The shadows approached her, raising their hands and swinging the glimmering silver blades within them down at the girl, but their heads flew off in the next moment. Blood. In a single moment, for lives had been taken with such skill that the heads never raised a shout, never even realized what had happened. The familiar feel of the mana pulsing against her skin instantly told Rem it was the work of her sister. She stood up. If her sister was here, Rem had to follow her lead. She didn't even need to look around. Her eyes located her older sister immediately. The face identical to Rem's own was warped with grief. The older sister ran over to embrace the younger, sighing with relief and relaxing her body when she realized Rem was unharmed. Rem hugged her sister back, never feeling more pathetic or happier in her life. Rem did not clearly remember what happened next. She thought that she'd leave everything up to her sister. That was best. That was right. Sis always chose the finest option among all available possibilities. And yet, they had been surrounded before she realized it. Even with silhouettes so numerous they formed a wall, Rem looked at them in a daze, still believing that Sis would somehow overcome. Her sister pushed before her, straining herself, yelling. Tears flowed from her cheeks, her body seemed to shrink as she made a desperate plea. When they threw her sister to the ground, Rem felt troubled. To look down at her sister was to contradict her way of life. To stand behind her sister, to hide behind her back, was what brought meaning to her existence. Her sister screamed. She returned to her feet and spread her hands out before her. She unleashed the mana. The power would flow through her sister, and invisible blades would descend upon the world, slicing everything around them. But the moment before unleashing it, her sister turned around, embraced Rem, then, an impact. And then, Rem could only watch. She saw steel flash at her sister's head from the side. She saw a white glimmer dance in the reddened sky. She saw the severed horn spin round and round and round. She saw blood gush out from her sister's forehead. She heard someone's high-pitched scream. She listened to the cries of the sister she adored, the sister who had shielded her and taken the blow for her, as the beautiful white horn that she had so envied tumbled through the sky. Finally. It finally broke off. That was the thought she had. For Rem did not understand the details of what occurred after that point. What she did grasp was that at some point, they'd lost consciousness, only to awaken far from home with a huge mansion all around her, and that her sister, who had lost her horn, was there with her. Her sister had regained consciousness first and was overjoyed to see Rem awaken, but Rem was lost in thoughts of her twin, whose abilities ranked lower than the average person's now that she had lost her horn. On the surface, her behavior was largely unchanged, but there was no trace of the talent she had commanded in every area. Now that she struggled with even minor things, Rem had many opportunities to help her. And so, one would think that Rem would develop a superiority complex toward her now universally inferior sister, but one would be wrong. The inferiority complex took root in Rem's spirit even deeper than before. In other words, Rem felt shame at the fact that her sister had gone from beloved by the whole world to having to endure life at the bottom. Rem's guilt was spurred on by the admiration she had for her older sister. Had Rem's heart been filled with only jealous thoughts, no doubt it would not have been so. But Rem loved her sister. And she was not so shrewd or self-serving to live and forget the thought she'd had that moment when her sister's horn was broken. I have to do everything in Sis's sister's place. Rem changed how she addressed her older sister and put her days of hiding in her shadow behind her. Rem's battle had begun. In all things, in all duties she was assigned, all she could think was, sister would do this. She'd always been right behind her sister, watching. Her sister's judgment had never failed. Even so, the results were always less than she expected. That was natural, for her sister was incredible. With a flawed little sister like her, even both of them working together could not reach the same place. Rem had to blaze the trail that was properly her sister's to have blazed, to have walked, to have led her down, and to lead her older sister along it by the hand. There was no longer any individual life for the girl known as Remington. To Rem, the only thing she could do was live the life sister would have. That she could not fulfill such a role made her unable to believe that she had any real value. Days and months passed. There, in the mansion that had taken them both in when their homeland was burned away, the gap between their reality and Rem's ideals wore at her day after day. It was not that she minded her role as a servant. The lord of the manor had benevolently given them a place to stay, and moreover, she adored her older sister enough that she did not mind offering up body and soul. If problems arose during these untroubled days, Rem took full responsibility. "You have done well," the master would say in praise. She had heard such words from her homeland many times over. "Don't force yourself," her sister would say to Rem out of concern. But even forcing herself was not yet enough. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" One irresponsible person had asked Remington. That was obvious. Because she was inferior in anything and everything. Even if she pushed herself to the breaking point, whittling away her soul and burning her body to ash, she would never reach that which ought to have been. What could she do to atone? And so, Rem dedicated her life to cutting open the path that her sister ought to have walked herself but that Rem had stolen from her. For Rem was a substitute for her sister in all things and nothing more. With her obsession strengthened, the 7 years wore upon Remington. Others dutifully commended Rem on a daily basis for her earnest hard work, though to Rem these efforts never yielded satisfactory results. Even Margrave Roswell praised her as a capable worker, to the point that he commanded her to serve at his side during that significant time when the royal selection was underway. And yet, all the praise she earned filled Rem's chest with vague unease. The days and months had not made her sense of guilt fade away, indeed, they had only reinforced it, and she continued to live her life for the sake of her older sister. And then, Lady Amelia and sister had returned from the royal capital, bringing a foreign element into the mansion. "My name is Subaru Natsuki. 0 work experience. Pleased to meet you." The wounded lad had been brought into the mansion because he had saved Amelia's life. Upon waking, the young man negotiated with Roswell and gained for himself the position of apprentice servant in no time at all. Naturally, Rem was gripped by a deep sense of distrust toward the youth of uncertain origin. In particular, she could find nothing to like during the first 2 days, when the young man had plastered a smile on his face and worked constantly to win her and her sister's favor. Furthermore, there was a scent wafting around him that triggered memories in Rem that she could barely endure. It was the scent of the witch, the miasma that surrounded only a few beings in the entire world. Ever since her homeland had become a sea of flames, Rem's nose had learned how to pick out the scent. She did not know why. She knew only that it triggered abominable memories and that 7 long, bitter years had taught her that nothing good came from that which accompanied the scent. She had been unable to make her antipathy plain in front of Roswell and Amelia, but instead, she had often found herself staring at the young man while he seemed at war with himself. Now that she had lost her horn, sister had no need for any relationships other than her one with Roswell, whom she adored. To Rem, who had stolen her sister's proper place, there was nothing more important than protecting the place her sister could be at ease. And Rem would show no mercy to those who threatened their home. As far as anyone else could see, the boy showed no sign of untoward behavior whatsoever. Yet even as her sister told her that they should only watch, Rem thought he should be driven out of the mansion as soon as possible. By the time something happens, it will be too late. Such was the conclusion Rem had formed at the time. And then, she saw Subaru sleeping on Amelia's lap. Rem gave Amelia's opinion on the matter a great deal of weight, but internally she was still struggling to think of how she should treat the person known as Subaru. Rem, who had strictly observed Subaru's every action because he was an outsider, understood that he tried his utmost in everything he did, including the sarcasm. It was in complete contrast to his frivolous manner. And seeing him struggle so hard to produce results in spite of inferior ability reminded her of someone, but she couldn't put her finger on it. From the following morning onward, she saw Subaru's demeanor and behavior in a different light. The strained atmosphere evaporated, how he approached everything changed, even if his technical skill had not. He had gone from striving without a tangible goal to burning with desire to accomplish something. Naturally, his approach to work changed as well. He still held others back, but the quality of his work did rise a little bit. Rem, who welcomed no changes to her environment, still regarded Subaru as a troublesome interloper, but she felt like she should at least not regard him as an enemy. Then, when Roswell was absent, disaster struck. Worst case, the whole village might get wiped out. Rem, ordered by her older sister to accompany Subaru, half-doubted the extreme scenario he'd suggested so seriously. However, when they reached Earlham village, the children really were missing, and the barrier that should have blocked off the forest had been breached and was no longer functioning. Rem, let's go. We have to do something. Rem had recoiled at Subaru's invitation to go into the forest to rescue the children from their plight. Of course it was strange. Rem could not grasp why someone so powerless would act so desperately for children he barely knew. Subaru was not being reckless. He was well aware of his own weakness. And still he did not hesitate to ask others for the things he lacked. What incredible arrogance, she had thought. They had gone into the forest, found the children, and used magic to save them. Even when Subaru wanted to go deeper into the forest to find the missing last child, Rem was not surprised. With eyes that said he was useless, an expression that said he didn't measure up, a voice that bit back the urge to give in many times over, Subaru never stopped struggling. When Rem watched Subaru head into the forest by himself as she healed the children, her heart fluttered furiously. She was filled with warmth that words could not express. After Rem had handed the children over to the young men of the village, relying on the miasma of the witch to reach Subaru once more, she had found him in a life-and-death situation, surrounded by a pack of demon beasts. Seeing the sleeping girl in Subaru's arms had cleared away all Rem's doubts. As Subaru ran, Rem leaped into action, running interference for him against the attacking mob of demon beasts. Blood and pain toyed with her, but Rem felt light, as if a weight had been lifted from her heart. Not once had she imagined that trusting someone, trusting Subaru, could feel so good. The next moment, Rem had sustained an impact that plunged her mind into darkness. In its place, her demon instincts took over, and she began an indiscriminate slaughter. She learned the pleasure of making flesh fly apart. She felt delight at indulging in her power, completely forgetting her goal. Her demon instincts demanded more blood, more lives. The collision against her back had sent Rem flying, dulling her reactions. Something was holding her down. When she looked behind her, she saw Subaru's face. The relief on it snapped Rem from reflex to rational thought. She saw a ferocious demon beast right next to him, its fangs drawing near. She needed to jump, to reach out, to save him, so thought Rem when suddenly, the miasma tickled her nose. That made her delay her decision by a single moment. And then, Rem finally realized that she had not changed at all. She had committed the sin from long ago, again. Chapter 6, All In. 1. When Rem regained consciousness, her feet were not planted on the ground. There was an arm firmly around her waist. Someone was carrying her. She did not think that the rough manner was any way to touch a girl. Though that was indeed the case, the owner of the arm was sprinting recklessly, with not a shred of concentration for anything beyond that. Barusu, go right at the broken tree in front. You are slow. Don't demand the impossible. I'm running, as hard as I can, here. Two familiar voices, one more intimately so, were yelling at each other from close by. The intense up and down shaking jostled Rem's head back into consciousness. Subaru, what are why? Rem, you're awake? Subaru kept running as he voiced his delight and glanced down at her. Rem looked up at him, her mind still rather hazy, when something unexpectedly caught in her throat. The side of Subaru's face was wet with blood. Maybe he'd cut his forehead? The scars all over his body from the night before had whitened. At some point, new wounds had been made on top of them, staining both with fresh blood. Rem, her pink hair swaying as she ran beside Subaru, made a faint, pleasant smile toward her. I am so glad, Rem. You are one high-maintenance girl. Rem's words were few, but only those who really knew her knew this particular smile. She reached out and stroked Rem's blue hair. A moment later, Fola. She conducted the Blade of Wind incantation and used the resulting attack to slice through the trees and cut the demon beast charging at them into discs to nourish the plants on the forest floor. For a moment, Rem seemed dizzy, her steps went astray, making her lightly bump into Subaru's body. Ow wah. Ram, you know better than to touch my right shoulder, geez. Be quiet. You would have been bitten if not for me. You can at least be a wall for me to lean on. At least pick the other shit, ow ow. Subaru was half in tears as he cried out in fierce pain. Ram put her weight on Subaru as she bled from the scar of her lost horn. Rem watched both of them as the current situation slapped her in the face. Why was she in a place like this? Why were they protecting her? Why? Why, did you not just let me be? She trembled as she voiced the question. Subaru stared down at her with a look of disbelief as Rem's quivering lips continued. You and sister coming made it meaningless. I have to do this myself. I should be the only one getting hurt, it's a little late for that. Ram and I are all beat up already. Hell, maybe more than you are. Subaru was prone to exaggeration, but he seemed to believe every word of that last sentence. She wondered what Ram thought of that, but her beloved twin did not enter the conversation. Ram felt like her sister had left her out on a limb as she desperately tried to find the right words. It is my fault. I hesitated last night, that is why. I have to take responsibility. If I do not, I cannot face your sister. Now may not be the best time for it, but we're actually, talking. That's seriously awesome, really. You should not have been bitten at all. Though Subaru didn't look like he was listening, he apparently heard her words loud and clear. His face went stiff, looking at Rem as she confessed her sin. Rem's shortcomings had caused Subaru to risk himself to shield her during the forest battle the night before. When she saw the fangs had punctured and ripped Subaru's flesh, bathing him in blood, she could only gape at what her conduct and judgment had wrought. The same scent as on that day long ago, when everything had been burned away, had hovered thickly around Subaru. And Rem had caught a whiff of it, leaving her unable to move. It is because I hesitated to reach out to you that you nearly died. And then your body suffered too many curses to lift. That is why you went off to deal with it by yourself to atone for it, right? Just as Subaru nodded in acceptance, Rem drew in her chin, once again acknowledging her own sin. Rem was prepared to be scolded and scorned. Subaru should have given her a tongue lashing before she had set foot into the forest again. She had not let him because she had not a moment to spare to save Subaru. That, or she was unprepared to face the consequences of her weakness. Rem, resenting her own frail heart, thought it must surely be the latter. She was prepared to accept whatever words he struck her with, however stern they might be. After all, that was only the punishment she deserved for the crime she had committed. Remington, yes, Subaru's face was truly right before her eyes. Bonk! The hard smack sound of bone upon bone sent sparks into Rem's vision. For an instant, the sharp pain narrowed Rem's field of vision as she put a hand on her forehead in confusion. When not in her horn form, her flesh was no hardier than an ordinary human's. No doubt others would be able to see a faint, reddening bump from the impact to her brow. Rem's eyes were still wide, with no idea what was going on, when Subaru looked down at her. To begin with, are you an idiot? No, you are an idiot. Borusu. You split your split forehead and it is bleeding again. Ram butted in to speak. Subaru shook his bloodied face. I'm an idiot, too. I know that already. But your little sister's an even bigger idiot. Rem realized that Subaru had headbutted her. She didn't understand the significance at all. Now look here, in my homeland, they say, 3 women make a market. Not that that has anything to do with this. But they also say, 3 heads are better than 1. What's sagacity, anyway? Subaru murmured to himself after he spoke. Anyway, he said, twisting his neck as he continued, it's like how it's easier to snap an arrow with 3 people than a person might think. I am guessing you are using that somewhat unlike the original, a New York WAY. Don't think about it all by yourself and rely on the people around you. You understand what I'm saying, right? If you had your heart grabbed like him, Subaru was about to say something when his expression changed to one of pain. That was over the line, huh? That's a little strict, ain't it? What are you talking of? Wait, Subaru, the scent of the witch is suddenly much thick. Rem pinched her nose, twisting her body away from the repugnant smell. Right beside her, the horrible, abominable stench wafted about. What had suddenly caused it to? But Subaru moved to set Rem's misgivings aside with a statement of his own. Well, I need you to switch gears on that for now. I'll switch gears, too. Rem was agape, but the serious look on Subaru's face told her to push that question down the road. Subaru looked ahead as they ran, the tension and caution in his eyes growing stronger. Simultaneously, Ram, again running beside him, put a hand to her painful forehead as she began to chant. Ram, the villa, no, the barrier's good enough. Which way is it to get there? If we can slip past the pack before us, we simply need to sprint to the left, but what are you planning? When Ram asked, Subaru let out a long sound as he made a sour face. How about I push Rem onto you and I cruelly run off to the barrier on my own? You intend to let me flee with Ram while you lure the Urugurum away? Understood. Can you not spoil what I was trying to hide? It's embarrassing. The speed of their run did not abate as Subaru and Ram sparred with their words back and forth. When she heard what they were saying, Rem felt a feeling of despair, like the whole world was turning black before her. I cannot save you like that. Please stop this. If you do this, luggage should be seen and not heard. It's all right, I'll get past the barrier and hook up with you there. After that, I have a special plan you don't know about to take down the demon beasts all at once. It'll be big, an easy win. She had no idea what special plan Subaru had prepared. To be blunt, she wondered if there even was one. Was he simply papering things over? Subaru slipping past the pack by himself was all but impossible in the first place, she thought. You need to do no such thing. I will wipe out the demon beasts all by mice. She couldn't let Subaru do anything rash. Rem tried to move her arms and legs. But her limbs merely dangled, refusing to obey her commands. The most she could do was wiggle her fingers and move her tongue around a little. Nothing was working as she was accustomed to. Where is my weapon? Like I could carry around a heavy thing like that. I'll buy you a new one later, geez. Pain shot through Rem as she realized she was unarmed and unable to move, so there was nothing she could do but be protected by others. The thought drove her to despair. Subaru gently handed Rem off to Ram. Don't drop her. I believe I have more strength than you possess in one arm, Barusu. Why'd you make me carry her, then? You never told me to, did you, Barusu? Seriously, that's your answer? Subaru slapped his own face for missing the opportunity. Rem looked up at Subaru from her sister's arms, shaking her head at the unbelievable reality. She'd said so many mean things about him. Why was he going this far? Subaru, why are you going this far to? Good question. Her inquiry sent Subaru into thought for but a single moment. He raised a finger and smiled. Because you're the first girl I ever went on a date with. I'm not so cruel that I can just turn my back on you. As he spoke, he gently petted Rem with the same hand. Well, I'm gonna head off for a little bit. Take care of Rem, big sis. I pray that you meet with us safely, Barusu. With that brief exchange, they suddenly parted ways, with Subaru running one way and Ram another. Ram ran right. Subaru ran left. The Uruguram pack coming from the front hesitated at their prey splitting up, but only for a moment. They immediately ran off in pursuit of Subaru. Sister! Barusu was risking his life to buy us time. I shall make good use of it. Sweat formed on Ram's brow as her tone made plain she had no margin for error. The combination of wounds and fatigue slowed her down considerably. Compared to Rem in horned form, it was nothing. When Rem thought of that, she regretted what she had done enough that she wanted to cry. If Rem could have returned to horned form, she'd have had the power to get them through this, not only to save Subaru but to carry her older sister out of danger. She could do it all. And yet, at the most critical of moments, she was unable to even bring out the demon within her. It was her own half-hearted weakness that had brought Subaru and her older sister here and held them back. In contrast to the regret-filled Ram had not hesitated when Subaru offered himself as a decoy. No doubt that was because she valued Rem's life above Subaru's and, indeed, even her own. Knowing that Subaru's ploy would buy them time and increase their odds of survival, she had accepted without the slightest falter. Though Rem thought her beloved older sister's judgment was correct, she suddenly rebelled against the idea. Why was sister so strong enough to cut anything and everything away? What incredible part of her allowed her to make such a horrible decision so easily? Rem wanted to see for herself. Sister. Subaru. Subaru is. Remington. We cannot turn back. It would put his resolve to waste. They were the words of her beloved sister. Her sister was always right. If Rem followed her, she would surely be safe, for Rem had always been right. Then why did what was right feel so empty? Sis. Ram's expression greatly trembled in response to Rem's heartfelt shout. Ram bit her lip, her eyes wide open as her feet came to a stop. Rem instantly twisted her body, escaping her sister's arms to fall to the ground, rolling as she looked behind them and saw Subaru's back as he ran. Far away, his run was much too slow to be called a sprint. She saw his black hair and his wounds all over. She saw the sway of his listless right arm, devoid of strength, and the way Subaru appeared to be hiding his emotions. Towering before Subaru was a giant, sheer black demon beast. Judging from its size compared to the rest of the pack, it might well have been the leader. Under that fearsome gaze, surrounded by predators, Subaru ferociously ran. No matter how much she stretched out her fingers, no matter how much her heart quaked, she could not reach his back. And yet, Rem shouted, as if pleading. Subaru. She did not know if her voice reached him. All she saw was Subaru on the run, his left hand drawing the dimly glimmering sword as if responding to her call. He didn't understand it himself. Since when had he become a man stubborn enough to do something crazy like this? No matter how much he wanted to put on a brave face and not make the sisters feel like they owed him, this was completely, thoroughly not like him. With his back turned to them, the look on his face crumbled the instant he knew they could no longer see it. He keenly felt both extremes of pain, dull and sharp alike. His mask had fallen to pieces, Subaru's magnificent face scowling as his tongue pathetically hung out like that of a dog. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts, Mommy, Daddy, Emilia-tan. He invoked the three most important people in his life as he glanced at his dangling right arm. The intermittent numbness in his shoulder was from his crash landing after his blow to Rem's horn. He hoped dearly it was merely dislocated. One way or another, he couldn't rely on his right arm for combat. With one less weapon at his disposal, Subaru had no idea how he was going to face the enemy standing before him. As Subaru ran, he found the demon beast pup standing in his path, the one that had been the bane of his existence more than once. Subaru wondered if it had a grudge against him to be so darned persistent. "I'd like this to be the last time we meet," Subaru kept running as he girded himself for the cascade of stones the demon beast would surely unleash. If that hit him when his guard was down, there was no way he'd get away with just a dislocated shoulder. Shaking off the unpleasant image of being whittled to death by 1,000 stone cuts, Subaru mentally simulated dodging at the exact moment the stones would be unleashed. He gave the demon beast a half-resentful, "Gimme your best shot" glare when he suddenly sounded quite clueless. Subaru could scarcely believe his eyes at the scene unfolding before him. The demon beast pup made a small howl before curling up its little body further. It seemed to be gathering all its strength. Before Subaru, whose eyes were narrowed with no idea what was coming next, the fur ball suddenly grew with explosive force. Poof! In the blink of an eye, it grew from the size of a cute, huggable domesticated dog to something larger than the largest breeds, to the point one might call it jumbo-sized. I've seen this in manga a lot, but seriously, where does all the extra mass come from? The reply to his question was a howl that seemed to make the entire forest shudder. It used its hind legs for support as it vigorously sprang off the ground. The demon beast then struck together the claws of both its raised paws, revealing them to be sinister weapons that could slice through human bone with the slightest graze. "Oh, so you're not gonna settle this with magic? What did I ever do to you?" Subaru shuddered at its decision to fight their final battle mano a mano as he looked around, searching for any avenue of escape, but demon beasts in pursuit were cutting off the back and the sides, making escape a difficult proposition. "Man, coming after me instead of the beautiful sisters. You guys have seriously demon-cursed taste. Damn it all." Once he noticed it, his steps slowed as the beasts surrounded him. Apparently, Subaru had brought every demon beast in the whole forest running. His decoy operation was a huge success. He didn't have time to have a nervous breakdown or piss his pants while begging for his life. With all avenues of escape cut off, his only option was to run straight forward. In other words, he had to take the giant demon beast down one-on-one. He fumbled in his side pocket. He felt a rock, a piece of hard candy, something that felt sticky and icky, and all I can do now is trust in Puck. He took it out and tossed it in his mouth as he prayed to the gray cat with all his might. There wasn't much time before Subaru would reach the demon beast. They would clash in mere seconds. That was when Subaru, he heard it. That moment, Subaru heard someone call his name. It had a painful echo, drenched in sadness as if the whole world were about to end, knowing that whether Subaru lived or died determined whether her heart would shatter. Perhaps it was insensitive of him, but Subaru was happy. "I'm too pathetic. A pervert. A two-faced jerk." It wasn't like he couldn't guess how the girl felt as she cried out his name. The fact that he smiled nonetheless was proof he was totally mad. He smiled, and when he was done smiling, Subaru's left hand drew out the broken one-handed sword. The demon beast roared before him. Subaru put all his weight behind the sword as he, too, yelled out. Their voices raised a pair of discordant war cries. Soul clashed against soul. A moment before they were within each other's reach, Subaru inhaled deeply. He pictured the center of his body. He focused on the region between chest and waist, imagining a gate connected to the outside, just above his navel. Shamaak. The magical invocation permeated the air. The next moment, a black cloud erupted around Subaru. The cloud enveloped Subaru and all the demon beasts. The decisive battle in the forest was now sealed within the darkness. 3. Within the black cloud, the world was incomprehensible. The shape of the world, its color, its scent, none of these things could be discerned here. The single firm, solid sensation came from the soles of his feet touching the ground. If not for that, surely he would not have even known which way was up inside the darkness. He could see nothing. He could hear nothing. He could understand nothing. So this was the end of the world. As Subaru felt his feet pressing against his shoes, he searched for something within the haze. Surely there was something that awaited him within the black cloud, something he had to do. Something was missing. Faced with a world of incomprehension, he had to remember the world of comprehension. Why had this nothingness come? Who had brought it? What were the conditions for ending it? Remember the world beyond, the world that was firm under his feet. His command to his brain made thoughts erupt like sparks. He couldn't make it another step. His feet were drained of all strength. Sooner or later, the incomprehension would crush him, making him doubt even the sensation of his soles. If he could see that coming, the answer did not lie outside him. If the answer was not outside his body, it must lie within. Even if he could not bring the oblivion outside him to heal, he could call upon his internal organs, all subconsciously functioning even then. The roles had been assigned. It was time to move. And so, finally. Suddenly, he felt like his entire body was on fire. The unendurable sensation of heat ripped through Subaru's body, bringing not words from his throat but a bestial cry. No, he thought it had. He did not understand even that. He didn't understand. He didn't understand, but his feet, once drained of strength, moved once more. Forward. His feet moved in the direction he believed to be forward. Awareness, oblivion, awareness, oblivion, awareness, oblivion, over and over and over, until finally, the instant Subaru broke through the black cloud, leaping outside it, his sword hit something extremely thick. The sword in his hand was ripped out of his grasp. Subaru lifted his face and bit down his shock. Before his very eyes, the huge demon beast's head remained thrust into the black cloud, and the single-handed sword Subaru had been grasping was deep in its chest. The surprise blow left an ugly feeling lingering in the middle of Subaru's hand, the feeling of plunging a dull blade into the flesh of a living creature. The psychological shock was greater than he'd anticipated, giving rise to what was almost an eerie, out-of-body feeling. The demon beast, still in the world of incomprehension, couldn't even feel the blade in its body. Even as Subaru glanced at the contradictory spectacle of a dead beast that didn't know it was dead, he shamelessly ran, putting distance between them while he still could. His head was heavy, his whole body was sluggish. It was the aftereffect of using magical power without complete command of it, and thus burning excess amounts of mana. In the first place, using that magic should have spewed out all the mana in his body, leaving him on the ground and unable to rise again, but Subaru had played his trump card to get around that. Thanks a million, brats. Subaru spat out the tiny remnants of the fruit's skin still in his mouth as a small smile came over him. He'd spat out a bako fruit, a recovery item that brought strength back to a body devoid of mana. It was amid the completely useless things the kids in the village had pushed onto him when he was heading off to rescue Remington. He had no idea where they'd found one. The instant he was sure he had one, his head had been able to muster that plan alone. If he bit down on it at the exact moment he used his magic, maybe he'd be able to move afterward. He'd gambled his very life on it, but the scales had marvelously swung Subaru's way. Putting his back to the demon beast trapped in incomprehension, his feet took him in the direction the barrier ought to have been. Subaru was a beginner with insufficient mana, so he had no idea how long his shamak would keep going. He couldn't think of any other way to buy time, so he had to get as close to the barrier as he But Subaru's scheme was instantly foiled by a single claw that grazed the back of his left thigh. The sharp pain heralded the bleeding. Subaru let out an anguished groan as he fell to his knees. But Subaru's mortal foe would not permit him to kneel. Its thick paw violently grabbed Subaru's neck, the tips of its claws digging in as it easily hoisted him up. Damn it all, before his very eyes, he saw the gaping maw of the huge demon beast open wide enough to swallow Subaru whole. Its fangs dripped with blood as its stinky breath hit Subaru's face. He could only smile desperately at the depth of the creature's grudge. Go to hell, why don't you? He yanked the sword out of the demon beast and plunged it into the creature's mouth with all his might. The fatal blow delivered to the inside of its mouth sent the demon beast roaring and flinging Subaru's body away. Subaru tumbled across the ground, holding onto the sword, then held it before him as he looked up at the demon beast. Yeah. How's that, sucker? Bite on that. The demon beast shook its head, facing Subaru in a berserk rage. Subaru, his body drenched with blood, taunted it with trash talk. With blood all over their faces, they only had eyes for each other. They were whittling down each other's lives. They both understood. None of this would end until one of them slew the other. They stood off against each other. A single spark would be enough to set them off. The confrontation between man and beast, no, two beasts, was on the cusp of beginning. But the square impact of the fiery shot that rained down from the sky put it on permanent suspension at the sound of a man's voice. I'll go. Whoa. Subaru shielded his face as the shockwave enveloped his body and blew him back. All of a sudden, the ground in front of him exploded into flames. The high-temperature impact enveloped his entire body with a ferocious wave of heat. Subaru, lying on his side, shook his head as burns added to the wounds already peppering his flesh. What the hell just? The hot, parched air seared Subaru's throat as he looked up and saw. His cheeks stiffened in shock. Before Subaru's very eyes, the huge demon beast was wrapped in a pillar of fire. It was burning. The flames licked its entire body. The demon beast's paws shuddered and tore at the ground in agony. With the air scorching its lungs, the demon beast could not make a sound as it writhed within the crimson sea and finally dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. All that was left behind was a clump of blackened flesh that had lost 2/3 of its mass. The unforeseen end of the demon beast was not all that surprised Subaru. Flaming shots like the one that had burned the demon beast to death rained down from the sky one after another, plunging into the black cloud. From outside the spread of the darkness, Subaru could not see for himself the full power of the flames upon landing. But he could guess what they were doing. Inside the impermeable darkness, the demon beasts were being destroyed without even realizing. Subaru could no longer tell if that was cruelty or mercy. However, who would have thought that a mere shamak, used chiefly for smokescreens, could be employed with this much impact? The man who had directed the demon beast's fiery death scene floated down from the sky, a flippant smile on his face. His long indigo hair swayed in the wind. His eyes were oddly colored, one blue, one yellow. He wore a bizarre outfit over his tall, slender body. The clownish lord, mightiest magic user in all the kingdom, Roswell, had arrived. Upon landing, Roswell brushed off his pant legs and swept his long hair behind him as he looked down at Subaru. Oh, you look rather desirable, I must say. You're super late to the party, Roski. How many times do you think I thought I was gonna die there? It was definitely more than a handful. After flinging his abuse, Subaru lost his strength. He fell down then and there, not even strong enough to get up on his knees. You sure figured out where I was, though. Ah, that is because of what Lady Emilia pounded into me at the village. She said, even if it's crazy and reckless, if he's backed into a corner he'll probably use magic, so don't you dare miss it from the sky. Damn it, Biko, you let Emilia figure it out real quick. Apparently Beatrice had not been up to the task. Perhaps it was for the better, given how Roswell had miraculously entered the fray at the last moment. Subaru thought over the circumstances when a voice sounded in his ears. Master Roswell. He saw Ram, who'd taken a detour around the burning black cloud, cutting through some thickets. Ram was leaning on her shoulder as Ram's expression melted in Roswell's presence. I am sorry to have caused you so much trouble. Oh no, that is quite fine. Indeed, you have done very well in my absence. Blushing hard at the words of praise, Ram pressed a hand to her chest as she made a solemn nod. Watching the exchange between them, Subaru let out a deep sigh of relief. Subaru. Rem suddenly rushed over and embraced Subaru, drawing a sharp cry from his throat. Guh. Before his eyes, blue hair swayed right next to his face. The soft sensations in so many places made Subaru understand the circumstances. In any other context, he'd be overjoyed, but he had no such leeway at that moment. Rem, my body's banged up all over the. Ah, my mind's kinda. Maybe she couldn't control her feelings, but she was hugging him with all her might. Every wound on his body began to cry out as Subaru desperately tried to pat Rem's back to appeal to her. But, you're alive. You're still alive. Subaru, Subaru, Subaru. Rem was too overcome with emotion to notice how Subaru was reacting. He felt her press her face against his chest and her warm teardrops flowing down her cheek. A wide range of ticklish sensations struck him, well beyond the capacity of Subaru's brain to deal with. In other words, oh man, not this, again, as Subaru spoke, his head slowly tilted forward, his neck no longer able to support itself. His mind grew distant. The voices grew faint. Finally. Go ahead and sleep. When you awaken, I must thank you quite earnestly. At the very least, rest assured I shall eliminate that which threatens you. Someone's voice sounded in his ears, serious and devoid of clownish effect. Feeling a deeper sense of security, Subaru gently let go of lucidity. Until the moment he fell asleep, he reveled in the warmth of the embrace and the relief of finally receiving it. Subaru's consciousness sank into a river of unconsciousness.